Good to have you all here. I did a bit of a mix-up on the calendar invite for Willard, so he should be here shortly. He just texted back. In the meantime, I think we can get this off the ground, and once Willard joins, uh, we keep rolling. We thought of doing this webinar because a lot has happened this year in the world of AI, and that dramatically changes the way we've come to expect our systems will behave, our software systems will behave, especially when we are thinking about how data moves from one system to another. What we are used to is if the systems have an open API, then all systems that have that open API should be able to talk to each other. That is the expectation. Now, not every system has it. Not every API lets you access all parts of that software system on demand. So you end up with the situations that the data is sitting inside a tool, you want it, but you can't get it out. So what can you do about it? And it seems, well, not just seems, we have here, we've actually deployed this now. We've got AI agents to solve that problem. So through this webinar, we'll be going over a very specific, specific angle of looking at this problem, which is landscaping businesses depend heavily on business management tools that are focused on landscaping, operation softwares, production softwares. There are various names for these tools. And these tools let you go from an estimate on the property to getting a schedule together for the tools to go and do the job, routing them, doing attendance, doing check-in, check-out on the property, opening tickets, closing tickets, keeping track of time. That then feeds into the billing, the invoices that are sent to these clients that you are servicing, and then also feeds into payroll that's run every week for the employees going out there and doing all. So businesses depend heavily upon this flow that I just described, which is central to operations. So a lot of data is sitting in these tools. And so how do we get more control over this data? How do we get more options to play with this data? How do we free this data to interact with other systems around? And also open up possibilities to move data from other systems, whether it's CRM, whether it's a mapping software, whether it's a financial tool, whether you're using QuickBooks or something else. From all these tools, how do you take data from these tools and put it into this operation software for better insight? Because at the end of the day, if we are able to see what's going on with business, then we can make better decisions from it. So that is the view we'll be taking as we go through these slides. Not a lot of slides today, only about 18 or so slides. But this is the central idea we'll use to look at this theme, that how do you integrate software systems with AI agents, and then I must also qualify that not every solution requires an AI agent. Just because you have a hammer, not everything is a nail. So I want to point out here that maybe you guys might be thinking about integrating a couple of your tools internally, and it's possible to integrate them without AI agents. And you want to find that out. You want to find out today here. You are here, we are here. The chat box is open. So if you got 2 tools in mind, or 3 tools, more tools in mind that you wish connected, talk to each other, had data moving from one system to another. That chat box that you're seeing, that chat button on the Zoom toolbar, hit that, man. Tell us what those tools are, what you have on your mind that you wish connected, that you wish talk to each other. And we've got our team here in on the panel. They're gonna do a little bit of research um, and give you an answer live, whether it's possible to do that integration, how you would you would go about doing that integration, and whether it's an AI agent that would do it or whether it's something else that we can bring to bear to do it, because there have been a lot of integration tools out there as it is. I'm pretty sure everyone here on the call has heard about Zapier. You would have heard about make.com. There was a whole uh, uh, you know vertical in technology systems called RPA, robotic process automation. That was before these agents came out. Very powerful stuff. Um, and so all these paradigms of integration have existed and are accessible to us. So between these wide range of options now, we can pick and choose what works best for your use case, for the tools that you're playing with. And let's use the next 50 minutes to do that conversation here in the chat box. The examples that I can address, I'll address straight away. Um, and as you're thinking through that in the background, um, let me let me take this off. Let me get this started. Just give me a second. Gonna text from the yeah. So he could be extra. We'll keep checking in on him. He's trying to get in. He's here. So I guess we'll do the introduction when he's here. Um, uh, you all would know me. I'm Utkarsh, CEO at SiteRecon. We are property mapping, takeoff estimation, site inspection uh, solution company focused on landscape maintenance, uh, driving productivity for businesses across the country in the US and Canada for the last over 5 years now. And it's been an absolute smash time working with the industry. And that's what drives us really to come out with innovations like this. We'll wait for Willard's introduction, keep moving. So we've got data integration challenges. We want to understand where they come from, what happens when the systems don't communicate. We want to find solutions to those problems. Um, and the objective is, how do we get power back to you? How do we get you control over the data that you spend a lot of time painstakingly entering into whatever systems you're working with right now. How do we get you more control over it? Uh, help you make these right choices. All right. So history of the problem. Well, Willard would say the history of the problem would go back to the coming of the internet in the late 1990s. We'll wait for him to fill that in. Um, but this one, the way we want to look at it, starts with pre-paper era. That's like 12 years ago. We've got software in our industry that is desktop based, that is on premise, in office, and you've got this server in the office that is serving um, different computers in the network. A lot of paperwork there, a lot of Excel sheets, um, good old simple days. It's not like it was impossible to build a good company or like a big company in that time, because we did see Brickman Group and the Valley Crest companies being built at a time when they didn't have uh, cloud-based business management software. They didn't have that, but yet they got to $700 million. Um, so obviously there was a way they found it, uh, and they made it work. But very few companies had that ability to scale like they did. Now, 14 onwards, you have softwares coming out that are on the cloud, that are focused on these applications like customer management. You've got CRMs coming out like HubSpot, Salesforce. Salesforce has been around for a while, but their big transition to cloud happened sort of, and that's also not a software for industry. So we'll keep it inside. So CRMs happened, um, landscaping focused business management softwares happened, really grew, had some big private equity money coming into that space, scaled it, uh, and then you had widespread adoption of scheduling tools, routing tools. Um, you had fleet tracking. When I say fleet, I mean your trucks, GPS in trucks. You had these solutions come out. Now, each of these solutions had their own point of view in the market. They were trying to solve a specific problem. Let's say business management software for landscaping typically solves the workforce management problem. How do you send them to the right job at the right time, have them do it? Um, so solve all the problems on site during that visit, and then you process that into an invoice and a payroll seamlessly. That's the problem they solve. When they came in, it was not like, oh, we're gonna
Utkarsh,
solve an accounting problem. Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Willard is there.
Yeah.
Would you like to add him? Yeah.
Willard there. Let's go. All right, Willard, I'm trying to promote you to panelist. You should be panelists now. Oh, there we go. Hey, welcome
Yeah,
to the
thank
room,
you.
Willard.
I've been forced to be an attendee for a few minutes.
And
So
I
yeah,
thought we would
I
never
do
get
agree
this
with what you
virtue.
were saying up to this point. So yeah, this is so far so good.
Dude, please, um, please tell us what you do, what got you into landscaping.
Well, so a little bit of my background. Yes, I've been in tech for a long time. I've done a lot of things in tech, but before I even got into tech, what got me into tech was working with my father in home services. He cleaned carpet for a living, right? And so um, I I remember summer vacation wasn't going on vacation. It was getting in the truck and pulling up a paper map and figuring out how to get to our destination as the co-pilot. And then, oh, where's that house? Where's that apartment complex? Like, what are we doing? And then getting to the job and just doing it all day, every day. That's what my life was growing up. So I've always been involved in home services. And my father was a really, really good technician, really good at the trade, but not great at business. And so what got me into tech was just realizing like, great, Google's out. I was born before Google. I remember I remember YouTube first becoming a thing. And I remember all the people that were selling my father different things, and some of them worked and some of them didn't. Let me build him a website. Let me do. I was 16 when I built my father his first website. And I was probably 6 months later, he had paid somebody else to rebuild it. And the new one that somebody just got paid to build and the one that I made, neither of them really brought leads, right? But I saw that this was clearly a direction that we were moving. Um, so I got into tech really as just being that support role to help people who sweat for a living, who work to be able to be more successful in the things that they do. And for me, it's a little bit personal because I feel like every time that I do that, I help families be able to spend more time with whoever's working, whether it's the mom, the father, any of that. So that's part of why I do what I do. Um, and I just really
That's
enjoy
it, man.
tech and happen to be good at it.
Well said, man. Well said. Um, so back to where we were. Oh, what got you to landscaping though? That was more recent.
Yeah. So that came because Robert, who is the CEO of Wilson 360, Wilson 360 has been around for a good period of time. Right? A lot of people here, you're probably familiar with who Bruce Wilson is, and he's done really great things in this industry. Robert and I were both at a conference requested to do roundtable sessions, and people were leaving my table to go to Robert's and vice versa. And then when we sat down through the rest of the conference, Robert and I got to bump elbows and understand a little more of what each other do. And, uh, you know, it, and so my focus had really just kind of been home services, helping a lot of different businesses in that sector. That's a little bit wide. Wilson is really more focused on landscaping, and I see a lot of similarities in landscaping to what I was very familiar with growing up. I know a lot of my father's direct competitors, and we used a lot of them, um, to be able to have subcontractors, all that sort of such, just to be able to make sure that the jobs got done if the job was too big. So there's a lot of camaraderie. I'm not sure that I'm saying that right. Uh, that I see in this industry that feels a lot like home.
Very cool. Um, so before you joined Willard, we had this question going on that in the chat box, please share the softwares you would like to connect. So you would see that Ivan has started the discussion at 9:12, but 11:42 Eastern, and you would see folks after that have one after the other added examples of what tools they would want to connect. So we keep picking that up as we go along. Shubham's answering that in the chat. Um, and yeah, I just wanted to bring you up to speed on what's going on in chat.
Yeah, awesome.
Sweet. So should we keep rolling?
Is everybody enjoying the webinar so far? We got some sounds,
Yeah,
some
you sound
emoji responses. Yeah. So paper era, the explosion with software.
explosion of software. And then obviously we all did our own attempts at integration. That's what we tried between 2021 and 2023. Um, Internally, a lot of stuff worked for us when we were trying to automate systems within SiteRecon. But when we went out there and tried to automate some of these integrations for our clients, um, they were like really brittle because the systems we were trying to integrate um, maybe didn't want that to happen. Maybe they were not built as such. So obviously, when changes happened in those systems, they broke. Uh, and so today, when we have this explosion of intelligence, we are able to come up with integrations that are much more robust and reliable, um, and actually pretty much mimic what a user would do inside an interface or software interface. So the way a user would operate it, these agents operate it, and so it's possible to finally put this put this thing to bed. Any comments on that, Willard?
I mean, I think we're about to get into it in the next slide. We've reviewed these
Yeah,
previously, but that's that's part of this is just a pattern that we've seen that's existed. Google coming about, and people trying to be able to find websites, that sort of such. So my comments are things that we're about to get into in the next slides. We're not missing out yet.
all right, all right. So what? Let me keep rolling. What ended up happening is you've got a finance tool that maybe existed in the company before you deploy an operation software, and folks are used to working there. And now that we train them to work in this new tool, but every once in a while they would go into the old finance tool, force of habit, publish an invoice, send it over to the client, but that invoice does not reflect back into the main tool. So bidirectional communication is often cited as the most um, frustrating problem, most commonly cited problem. Uh, Sales tools, and they change a lot. You've got HubSpot, you've got Pipedrive, you've got Close, got a bunch of them out there. And again, having having a sales guy do a lot of data entry, do it in a CRM, because you've got all your leads there. That's where you maintain your relationships, and then have them do a similar thing in the operational software, do a data entry. Sales guy is anyways not great at it, and so that leads to friction in the company. Mapping is what we personally experienced. Um, did not see a lot of tools doing a good job of integrating with systems out there, because everybody sort of has their own mapping tool. So why they would let someone else, talk to their software? So a lot of these push and pulls at play, and so these broken systems emerged. Uh, and I think this is where Willard, you should share as to
Yeah.
why this happened at the core level.
Yeah. So I do think that that last slide is a great slide for leading into this. One of those things about those broken tools is it they're not intentionally broken, right? Like it's not intentional that HubSpot doesn't talk to Aspire without you having to do a bunch of manual work. It's just HubSpot is focused on HubSpot and Aspire is focused on Aspire. It makes sense. But this is part of the natural pattern that we have seen with like Google coming about, and we've seen it in a lot of different ways. But I really like the Google example because what we're getting to at this slide is there's data you own, data you control, and data you don't control. So when you use a system like Aspire, when you use SiteRecon or any system that houses your data, you are essentially not in control 100% of everything that's going on. There has to be a bit of trust, right? So one of the patterns that we've seen with Google, for example, is that we love using Google because then we can find the things that we're looking for. There's so many websites, nobody has them memorized. Nobody knows every URL right off the top of their head. And who remembers if it was .com or .co or whatever it was. Google does all that kind of stuff for us. So we do give up some of that control, but it is it's adding value. It's creating an ease of use. And so what I'm getting at with data you own, data you control, and data you don't control. So we've got websites that we could find with Google, and if you wanted to be able to rank up there higher and higher and higher on Google, all we had to do was bend to Google's rules and implement SEO, search engine optimization, right? You didn't have to pay for it. You had to pay a developer to go through and figure out exactly what Google wanted, and Google will change what they want, right? So that's what I mean is if you wanted to move up, that's data you didn't control. That's your website. You made it. It's out there, but it's up to Google whether or not people see it. Data you control is, well, you can just pay Google and now they're going to push you up there, right? And then there's data you own. If the real goal for SEO is just to be in front of the people that you're selling to, you don't have to play the game with Google. You don't have to pay them. You don't have to do SEO. If you just have their email, you can just email them, right? So the main point of this is you've got these different paradigms that have existed with the internet coming about. You've got your file cabinet that is more accessible now than it has ever been. But as soon as it goes into these systems, because we're paperless, now your data is locked behind Aspire, locked inside of QuickBooks. And how do we bring them together? Right? So yes, it's your data, but it's not centralized. It's not in a spot where you actually have full ownership over it. That's the main thing that we're talking about here. And so this is just kind of setting up for one, how do you own it? And then two, what do you do about it afterwards? Right? The whole point of explaining this is to give you guys the control that allows you to be able to move forward and have the clarity that you're looking for, have the tools that you want to look for, and the experience that you want to look for. HubSpot's not broken, but I know a number of teams that don't get the value out of it. And it's just because it doesn't work well with the other systems that are being used inside the company. And it's not a problem of HubSpot, and it's not a problem of the other systems. It's a problem of the data, being able to have it as accessible as we need to.
So it's access and discoverability really that it boils down to.
Yeah.
All right. So show of hands, guys. Want to know which one of these is something that you know, when you are out there, systems, voluntary, when you've got multiple systems that need to have the same data, then you have to remind your people continuously to do it. Someone has to be in the training process, in the training loop, reinforcing it. And then, in case something drops, there's inconsistency. And folks, I feel like sometimes people just have enter the data in a different system. Happens with estimating all the time. You've got takeoffs sitting, and then you go into an estimating software, you put it in there. And when you're putting it in there, you're breaking it down into different types of movers, different deck sizes. But in your takeoff tool, you simply have a turf measurement. Now you don't know why it's broken down the way it is. There's inconsistency. Even if there's logic was done with the right intention, there's still inconsistency. So when you run a report, data from different systems doesn't match. So there you have it. We have a poll with us here, and it says out of 28 people who responded, 75% have issues with repeat word dual entry. 8 people are continuously training and reminding teams to do dual entry, and I'm pretty sure that feels weird. I've done it, feels weird. There's inconsistency, 59% people faced it. 52% have seen data from different reports don't match. There are two people who said other. Can you let us know in chat if you selected other, if there's a problem you faced and that's not listed here? So yeah, we're sort of all in the same boat here. And ultimately what ends up happening is a lot of time is going into these individual activities. And I did a rough back of the envelope calculation, and this totaled to like tens of thousands of dollars for a team that was like not even that big, under 50 for the course of the year. So this adds up. So what's the solution here? We've got Shubham going on in chat about some connections that we can make. We'll just take them up in a minute. I hope you all are going through it. But the agents are a ready solution for us. There are a few agents out there that you all might have heard about. There's actually ChatGPT agent, there's ChatGPT operator, there's deep research. All of these are agents because you give them a task and then they go do it. Willard, do you know of any others that I'm missing out on that are popular?
So yeah, one of the things that I'm thinking of specifically is as we were going through and reviewing these slides, Utkarsh was beginning to get overwhelmed with the number of comments of suggested optimizations that we could do. He's like, man, how is Willard just flying through this? I actually have AI built into my browser and capable of controlling my computer, regardless of using ChatGPT Operator. If you've used Operator, uh, anybody here used Operator before? It's kind of cool. It'll like open the browser, move things around, log in, do things for you, and ask your permission along the way. Yeah, I've got it literally hooked into my own browser. That browser is called Comment. Just like in the sky, Comment. Uh, every time I say it, I keep thinking of cleaning material, like the soap. And maybe it comes from having cleaned carpet and done janitorial to help fill in for those seasons that we weren't making as much. But it's awesome. And so I gave AI, great, here's our target audience. And I just let it run adding comments. Specifically, it wasn't changing our slides, just adding comments and suggestions all along the way. And how many did we get within 15 minutes, Utkarsh? Like 30?
Oh, it was not even 15 minutes, dude. Like it was more like 5 minutes. It had gone through all the slides, and it was just getting after it, and it was making comments in real time. It was making comments faster than I could read them, honestly. Um, and they were good comments, honestly, because we made a lot of those changes, and uh, like Willard is just sitting like this in his chair. So I joined the Zoom room. Willard is sitting like this, and that thing is just going after these slides you're looking at right now and just adding comments. And I was like, well, that's new.
Well,
So
AI is very, very promising. One of the things that I thought about as we had this slide, solution AI agents, is to really cover the solutions that have come before AI agents, automations, and analytics dashboards, right? All these kind of tools. One thing that I think about when it comes to analytics dashboards is we were just talking about own your own data, which requires you to like centralize it, pull it into a place that you really have. Uh, but the thought there is any of our analytics tools, Power BI, Tableau, that's literally what they do. Anytime that you're generating these reports, having these, that's what they're doing. They'll pull it from your data sources, but when they go to render your visuals, when they go to give you your input, it's because they have their own copy of that data. And so that's a solution that's previously existed. Automations break all the time because things change, but AI can change. It's not hard coded. It can it can have the concepts rigid. It can have the process rigid, but it's not gonna break just because a button moved.
a button moved, a text box changed. Yeah, I mean,
Right.
it understands the browser like we do. So you
Yeah.
don't need training. We don't need training every time something changes on the browser. AI does.
Mhm. Yeah. And there are important concerns. I see Mary's calling out like security. What do we do? Um, AI agents, but didn't hear something before. Yeah.
Sydney brings up a valid point.
Yeah.
So I think they have a couple of their own models that they use, and they also use in the background Claude and GPT as one of the LLMs, large language models, powering the agent on the front end that's doing all the activity that we see.
Yeah. So one of the other things that it comes to when it like you want security, you want reliability, and you like it's got to be able to provide the value for you to be worth investing the time. So as far as security, I can't answer what Site Recon has done, everything there, but their AI works. It's good. Um, and so one of the things is start small. And I think Utkarsh has done a wonderful job in starting small. So you're going to be able to see some of that here soon. As far as being able to answer about comment, uh, yeah, so there's OpenAI. There's plenty of different alternatives for which AI and being able to pull it into what you're using. but there's a choice. So when you go and you build out all these kinds of structures, you can make it plug and play to say, hey, we used OpenAI today, but tomorrow we're using Claude. The next day we're using something else. And as far as being able to have security, because I I'm a private person, I don't want AI to just have everything. But I am also a tech nerd. I've got AI in a ton of stuff, and um, I have AI that is installed on hardware that doesn't have access to the internet. That's pretty secure, right? So as far as the options that exist, there's plenty of them out there, but it's up to each, configuration as to how you make that work.
Absolutely. And so that's the choice. So you can have your own cloud setup. You can have your own cloud setup, and on that cloud, you can have a server. That server has that AI running. No one else has access to it. So you can have like a DeepSeek. You can have an open source model that is doing the intelligent part of that operation. Now it's not going to OpenAI servers. It's not going to cloud servers. And even if you were using OpenAI or Claude, they are available as LLMs within AWS, within GCP. All the cloud services out there, these large language models are available to you. And then you can choose to not share that data with with OpenAI, with Anthropic, the parent companies of these models. So those choices are available to you. If you want to control it, you want to keep it to yourself, you can do it. So I'm going to switch Wi-Fi for a second because I see I'm breaking. I've seen a couple of comments on it. Give me a second.
Cool. I'm just reviewing some of these comments, and it looks like great question. AI agents. So Joseph, you were asking like, how do we control the security of having them embed in our system? Um, I think that's a great question, and that is kind of up to each person as to what it is that you want to really focus on when it comes to AI. Like some companies are more forward thinking and ready to embrace and ready to. Uh, some companies are willing to have OpenAI touch their data. Some of them are not. So that's one of the things that you have to discuss and figure out internally is what things are you okay with? What things are you not okay with? Like for me, I'm okay with having AI learn and train on data as long as it's an AI provider that I trust, as long as the data that they have doesn't get shared, as long as there's silos and proper security in place. But not every AI does all those things or is consistent. It makes me think about who, not how, eh, because each opportunity, each AI that you could use is a how. You could be doing that. Do you trust that AI partner enough? Does your team trust that AI partner enough? Those are the things that we consistently come back to. That said, as far as embed, you may be referring to like AI embedding, chunking. That basically that's what Google does when they're like searching websites. I commonly represent that as saying indexing. And so, as far as AI being able to build up the understanding of your data, they use the term embedding rather than how Google has called it indexing, but it's essentially the same thing. That said, OpenAI holds the standard for how to do embedding practices. So all other LLMs are following OpenAI's standard on that. They're not the only ones that offer it, but that's the standard. So if that is a specific thing that you're focused on, understanding and how to do. Maybe I'm misunderstanding that question or diving a little too technical on it, but that's kind of how that start begins there. So happy to answer questions after this call for any specifics that you have, Joseph.
All right, keeping this moving. This is what we built within SiteRecon. So you got your takeoffs here. Um, you zoom into the export button. There's an export to CRM option. punch in the property ID. It's not actually necessary to punch in the property ID. Um, if you create that order using an API call, and in that API call, you input your property ID, that just gets called naturally here. You don't have to fill it out again. You click the export button. So off this goes, and you speeded up the video here a little bit. Took a couple of minutes to happen, and the takeoffs are there. You can see the results. You can see what's going on, uh, and yeah. So you've got your square feet, you've got debris, you've got all of it in here. You've got some um, bed definitions, and edges, read control. Yeah, wherever you want this data to go, this is going into that what you say space. Now, what we just ended up seeing is a rather a complex tool when it comes to estimating. There are simpler tools, cleaner, um, easier to work with, that we have also built integration for. So, um, say Elements, say Aspire, say, and any other tools out there that we've sort of got our agent to talk to and work through. And now this becomes like an example for us to think about what's possible. Now, to address that question of security, there are a couple of different ways to do this. We can have this run on a server that is set up exclusively for you. It just runs in the background. Okay. So you say, okay, here's my server. The server is set up on GCP. That's Google Cloud Platform. That's what we use. You can use AWS. Once the server is set up, it just, it's loaded there. It's a software that runs on that virtual machine, connects to your browser, makes it happen in the background. Now, another question I want to address here is, what it's taking 2 minutes. I can do that faster. Well, yes, you could do it faster, but you could also have the export run while you are still looking at the map. So the data went over, and you're still in the tool, you're looking around at the things. And at least you didn't have to change windows 5 times. Now, you were seeing just 5 items here. If you had ordered a more detailed takeoff, then that would have taken longer to do. So that's time saving. And then ultimately, you want to have consistency for everyone in the team. So there you go. Thoughts, questions, comments. First time on a webinar, unveiling it for everyone. Got a little bit of a heartbeat going on here, guys. What you see?
Well, while they're starting to answer in the chat, one of the things that I think about is, having seen what Utkarsh was showing here, is that demo could be a little bit anticlimactic, right? Because, and I think that was my first response to you, right? Dude, this is a little anticlimactic because AI, like, it's got this hype of being sexy and the latest. How do I know that this is AI and not just some automation, right? Well, some of the best,
that's true.
some of the best AI, you can't tell. And so, sure, we could spin up a browser and show you and display it on the screen to give you all those bells and whistles and make you feel good about using AI. But literally what he's doing here is you click export, the AI in the background opens its own browser. You don't see the browser. You don't see what it's doing. You don't need to micromanage it because it's something that's built out well enough that you can trust it. But yeah, it is AI opening a browser and then plugging in all of those things and then saving it, right? It looks no different than an automation. And so as far as your experience, you don't have to have it front and center, right? Like we all love while we're driving. We use a gas pedal. And so, yeah, that export button is just your gas pedal, and you can feel the power of the car moving forward without needing to stare at the engine.
That's right. Uh, Joseph has a question here. The problem is that it's logged in properties and opportunities. I want to be able to extract and call into Excel or Tableau so I can look for trends. Oh, so that's a BI question.
Yeah. Compare that with what's lost, what's won. Joseph, this is exactly what we're talking about in some of these next slides is, and it comes right back to that data you own versus data you control, right? So yeah, this is data that you can control, and we're giving you the ability to control it a little bit better from one system to the other. But what you're hitting on is exactly the pain point that we're getting to, which is we've given you better control. What we just showed you wasn't a moment where you had to do duplication, manual effort, pulling data from one system to another. You used to have to do that manually. So that was not really data you control. That was data you didn't control. It forced you to spend your time. And now you can click a button and you can control it to buy back your time. And so the next part of this slide, what we're getting into is how do you start to own it? How do you start to do exactly what Joseph's talking about?
Yeah. So two-way data syncing between tools that you're living in day out. Um, Make that happen. If you want to move data from old tools to new tools, you've got these old tools that are phasing out, and you want to export data from there. You've got the choice to do it. So no more, oh, this tool is shutting down, we're going to lose it. Yeah, you don't have to worry about that. The agent is going to run, it's going to take your data out, it's going to make sure you have it organized properly. And then an extension of that export is putting that export in a data lake that can feed into these BI tools like Tableau, Power BI, so that you can look into what's going on. And then, this is sort of happening if you're pulling it from 4 or 5 different sources, all of that is going into that lake and then funneling into your data. So another quick poll here. We have a lot of examples in the chat already. Um, we are looking at CRMs, we are looking at service autopilot. But if you had to say like, I want this solved first, which one would you go with? Which one do you want fixed first? And you all will have your own choices. This is a way to get a sense of what you want. And it's honestly an insight for Willard and I, as we are looking through these responses, to think through on, well, if you want this integration done, could we do something to follow up with you and help you build that out? Willard, you've worked with quite a few companies at this point. What have you seen out there that comes up most frequently?
I mean, I think you do really hit it on the head when saying that the fragmentation of finances is probably the biggest problem that I see in the industry. A lot of these companies are wanting to be proactive about their data, about how is the company doing. But if you don't have your data, as recent, as real time as possible, then it makes it kind of hard to pivot. Like if you're finding out 2 weeks later, 30 days later about how your company was doing, then a whole month has already gone by before you really made that change. Especially for the large organizations where the behavior has to kind of cascade down. So the more centralized you can have your data, the more insights that you could start to draw from it. And I think Joseph is calling out exactly a lot of what people are wanting to do. And regardless of finance, that's exactly what we're talking about, is the more that you can see holistically how the company is doing, And the more real time that information is, the more you can make some of those proactive decisions.
100%. All of the above, Philip, I'm with you, man. Um, 2 and 3, operations and mapping. We got you, Angela. Sales and mapping. Okay.
Looks like Joseph's giving a perfect example. He had a crew leader that was managing a remote irrigation job. He was told that it was on track as far as hours, but then found out that they were 2 times over. And I don't know how long it took to find that out, right? But right now, with how fragmented data is across all these vendors, all these different things, it's hard to find that out. It's really hard to be proactive. So yeah, I've got some geeking out examples that I could totally show on some of that. But I'll wait until some of these next slides to please do geek away. Yeah, so like I'm looking over here. I actually have a server rack in my house. Being a tech guy, this is overkill. My office heats up even during the winter. I don't need a heater. Um, that said, I have AI that runs without the internet here in my house. And one, thanks for pulling this slide up. So kind of coming back to this slide, because this gets right into where I was wanting to go. I'm going to go from the bottom up as far as the bullets. I think they're kind of in the right order as far as the implementation, as far as what you guys need to do. But I think thinking with the end in mind is kind of how you start to see why it's in the right order already. So I'm going to talk about it in reverse, but I think that you guys should execute from the top down, which is why they're in that order. So coming back to geeking out and what I've done here at my house, I've got Home Assistant. Home Assistant is literally like an open source platform that you can use. Now, there's a lot of data that you can pull from everything. And my geeking out is that I live on 20 acres in the middle of nothing, right? There's so much around here as far as dirt, wildlife. We've got birds. We've got all sorts of stuff. I'm not off grid. I do have grid tie, but I'm so far out here that we have issues all the time with power going out and random things that you just don't normally have if you're in the city, right? So as far as my house and the power goes out, we've got things that don't work right. We've got 20 acres. We've got different buildings. I've got a guest house that my brother lives in. So 2 houses on the same property. That said, when the power comes back, our internet does not work. Our Wi-Fi does not work. But my Home Assistant, it stays on even during a power outage because I got battery backup for my office, and I've got automations that can say, "Hey, here's the problems that are going to happen during power outages. Here's the problems that are going to happen afterwards," and it actually automatically fixes all of them. It says, "Hey, your Wi-Fi isn't repeating properly." Well, it's because they need to spin up in the right order. I need to restart one of them afterwards because it's going to be in isolation mode and it's not going to connect and a bunch of technical blah, 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 right? So the point is that because Home Assistant has actually broken down the silos of all my smart home devices, all my light bulbs, all of my everything, those things have been behind walls. There's Philips Hue and all these products. I don't know if you guys have used any of them, but how many apps are you going to have on your phone? I don't want to have that many apps. I don't want to use that many vendors. And some of these vendors don't have an API. But man, if the developers at Home Assistant and the community and open source haven't just been awesome at that. For example, my thermostat, I have mini splits here because we've got different buildings. My thermostat doesn't have an API. And normally, if I'm going to use that, it's going to talk to their web interface and then control my thermostats. Home Assistant has hijacked their web interface. So that way, everything that I do with my thermostats stays local on my own hardware. And I am not locked into their ecosystem just because their ecosystem isn't open. And so we capture all that data here. We've got that infrastructure of centralizing our data together. So coming back to that third point, that's what that is we've centralized it. Utkarsh.
Yeah, I was just making a side comment, guys, that you know why Willard is here now. Now you know why he's here because he's talking about hardware devices having APIs. That's just that's just beyond me. I was just
Well,
making a fun comment, Willard. Please go on.
and like this vendor, they're not a bad vendor. It's great for mini splits, but you know what? Locked down. They don't have an API. But
Fabulous software. It's a problem.
yeah, and I don't want all my data running through them. I don't want them, but I've got multiple mini splits here and controllers for them, and their product's fine. It's a great product, but their ecosystem doesn't talk to anything. And so we've been able to break down those silos. That's what you can do with AI. And because of all of my different smart home devices and all those kinds of things, I can be walking around at night and my cameras can detect that that's a person and not an animal and automatically turn on lights because we don't have street lights. We don't have anything like that. It is dark. And so, yeah, and then they're not going to turn on for the animals and wake us up in the middle of the night. You know,
It's true.
like
Dude,
we've got
sorry.
that.
I, I gotta interrupt you, man. Explain to us why it should happen bottom up and why you should go
Yeah.
top down.
So bottom up, we need to centralize our data, right? The reason why I can build out some of these automations and things is because all that data is in one spot and it's easily accessible. And then from there, you need to establish some data practices. So for me, I don't like my vendors being a gatekeeper. I don't like my vendors being the limitation on whether or not something can work, right? If a vendor works well, great, I'll use it. I don't need to bypass vendors. But if a vendor is not working well and they are the gatekeeper to the information that's going to allow me to get a benefit that I can see, I'm going to make sure that they're not a gatekeeper. I need to own my data and not have to bend to the whims of whatever control is going on there. And it's not necessarily intentional by them again. It's just that's how their system was previously built. Um, and so we've got these practices that we start to set up, these standards. There are good systems, good standards that you can use that'll help you to be successful in these automations so that way they don't break, right? For my AI that's installed here on my hardware, it it knows about what's going on in my house. I literally have a switch panel sits on my desk. I can just click a button and stuff in my house will do what I wanted it to based on those buttons I press, right? But the only way that it could do that was it had to be centralized. And then I have clear separations for concerns, for security, those kinds of practices to prevent it from a button on my desk from doing things that it shouldn't do, right? There's got to be clear interfaces of what's allowed, what's not allowed, and that's stuff that you're going to need a fractional CTO or CIO for, right? And yeah, that could be like a shameless plug. Hey, I am a fractional CTO. That said, you don't always need it. Sometimes you just need the advice. One of the things that I offer is a weekly call, Tech Tactical Tuesday. Sometimes you just need to know whether or not you're on the right track. And if you are, great. And sometimes you just don't know that you're actually digging a hole and you're about to find the rock that's at the bottom of it. And so that's part of what those weekly calls could be for, is just answering those kinds of questions. And if you are at that next level where you need somebody more hands-on, great, I'm here. And actually then centralize our data for us. Great. Well, we're building that, centralizing your data for you if you want. We're building in these practices for you if you want. Just got to opt in. You know where to reach us. We're making this possible for you.
About time. Um, and so on that infrastructure, one way to think about all of this is you can have multiple bots running. One bot could be just for integration between, Site Recon and your different tools. You can have different um, uh, integrations set up into this bot. It just moves from one to the other. You you can have uh, uh, like a server that hosts all that data that you're centralizing. Also in that infrastructure, you can have your BI apps hosted there. So you can have your in that infrastructure, you can have your own LLM, your own AI hosted. So all of those are options for you. Once we have that infrastructure, you can have bots, you can have LLM, you can have data, um, and uh, and yeah. So that's like one way to get control is like that that backbone of all these modern tools. If you have a piece of that in your business sitting with you, then you got it.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I want to point out here, though, is especially with AI being new, a number of people that I've spoken to are either intimidated about or curious about. Maybe you've tried a prompt. Part of what we're building out here is making it so that way when you do give a bad prompt, you can still get good results. Centralizing your data, training AI on your data allows you to be able to say things in shorter, easier prompts, just like you're talking to a person, and have it respond in a way that doesn't make you want to tear your hair out, right? The reason why ChatGPT doesn't understand your business is because it doesn't know anything about your business. You can say, "Hey, I'm a landscaper," and now it'll start to give landscaping stuff. That's totally different than if it actually has your data that it's been trained on, that it's done the embeddings, as we've discussed in the chat. Then you can say things like, "How is Manuel's crew doing?" And have the AI say, "Oh, they're up from last week. Here's their stats. Here's their performance. Here's some opportunities that his crew specifically can do based on comparing him to some other crews." It'll already have that context. That's why centralizing data is so powerful, is because it's like taking somebody who's brand new to your business and asking them a complicated question versus taking somebody who's been there. They know the answer. They don't have to go searching because they've been clocking in and clocking out.
This goes back to a comment that John Peterson made in the chat where he's like, we would like to give our bot more access to the customer data so that it can have a conversation with the customer to answer common questions they have, such as account balance, programs they have, services being scheduled. So yeah, I mean, you sort of want that out and in a place where the bot has context and run it, and that bot, is running ideally on your infrastructure. So, any follow-up question? Willard, when is I think we're at the end where, from a slides point of view, let me just quickly go through the takeaways. Um, integrate what you want. Walls are broken down. Out there. And yeah, the more we build utopia, the less of the dystopia will happen, whatever that. And then, we're here to help you set that up. We promise integration setup plus so here you guys have shared a lot of good ideas on what integrations you want set up. The ones we can make a run at it on our own, we'll get after it. The ones we need to pull in Willard on, then he's here to help us out with it. The simple stuff that just needs Make and like Zapier, just run that. And more detailed stuff.
Yeah. Literally here to build. Yeah, those are all DIY opportunities that will help you through. And joining in on Tech Tackle Tuesday, I don't release the recordings because, well, we're actually going to work on stuff. And we're actually going to apply something and make sure that you leave from that meeting feeling like you are empowered to do something. So join Tech Tactical Tuesday if you're interested in that. That said, like we're going to go way beyond Zapier, beyond me. You know, what Utkarsh showed again was anticlimactic. Look, that's an AI opening a browser in the background. It didn't even have to
Yeah, I
show
mean,
it to you.
for
Technical jargon, it's referred to as
for
headless mode,
obvious for obvious reasons, we
but
didn't want to show it. But yeah, that's exactly what's happening. What Willard's describing, and we can get into what those obvious reasons are on that follow-up call. Thank you so much, guys. Oh, Willard, by the way, if you have a link to Tech Tactical Tuesdays, please drop that in the chat here so that uh, uh, everyone has access to it.
yeah, I've dropped a link in the chat. That
Good.
has my contact info. It has information about Tech Tactical Tuesday, uh, Wilson 360. What we're doing is keeping our ear to the ground to understand the industry and what things are the biggest pain points today. And then picking one and moving forward, starting with where we're at and improving. So yeah, I think at this point we were just kind of open to questions. Anybody that wanted to, is that where we're at, Utkarsh?
Yeah, that's pretty much where we are at. The next slide is a thank you slide. Um, uh, really appreciate you all joining. If you have any follow-up questions, please drop them here in the chat. We'll take them up. Uh, if not, it was awesome seeing you. We'll hang around for a few more minutes. Um, and Willard, what was that geeky stuff that you wanted to bring out?
Oh, like the personal geeking stuff that I do. Like I've done Home Assistant. I actually have my own hardware that AI runs on, and so when like on my little dashboard here, it'll tell me whether or not my wife is home. That's crazy, right? Like I have
That's
multiple buildings. Yeah, it'll tell me if my wife is. It'll tell me if she's over at Walmart, and that's part of like the data you own, right? The data that I get from that actually comes. We use iPhones. The data that I get from that, I actually pulled it down from Apple from Find My iPhone. We have location turned off for as much as you can, but we want to be able to find our phone if it gets stolen or any of that there. Because it becomes data that I own. And because it's data that I own and it updates periodically, like it's not always real time, but it's pretty close. It's able to tell me, oh, hey, your wife's over at the store, which she'll do from time to time while she'll go to the store, kids are taking a nap, and I'm in an office, which is a little bit far from the kids' nap room. I got a little monitor that pops up automatically because my wife's not there, and now I can see the kids to tell if they're streaming. And yeah, like there's things you can do if you own the data. I have an automation, so like we've got lights and things around the house that can turn on as I'm walking up. I have an automation that when I'm away, like on a vacation, that my home will still have lights turned on and off as though I'm there, based on simulating the behavior that it has recorded on my local hardware, not shared with anybody, that knows what I've done around the house. So when I'm away, my house looks like somebody's still living there, which is
smart.
kind of important when you live on a dirt road in the middle of nothing. Like
Yeah,
nobody's going to notice
security.
somebody breaking in.
That's right.
Yeah.
Peter has a question here, Willard. He's
Yeah.
asking, is it still better to have APIs for companies that are starting to charge for API calls? Is this an avenue to circumvent some charges?
Thank you for reminding me about this. So one of the things that I look for, again, we've got the data you own, data you control, data you don't control. So I would say that companies, any vendors that you're working with, if they've got an API, they fit more into the data you control. If they don't have an API, and you have to figure out what Utkarsh has figured out to be able to move data around, then I would say that that fits more into the data you don't control, right? That own, control, don't control is a pattern that we've seen in a lot of things. It's what happens for Google. It's what happens for a lot of things. So is it still better to have APIs? Yeah, because it's a lot better than data you don't control. But using and leveraging those APIs, the difference there to getting it to data you own is through an API. Great. If you want to have Power BI, it's going to use those APIs and extract the data to have its own local copy. So that way it can build out all the analytics and dashboards that you want. But it has to own it first. And so APIs is great for getting to the ownership, but you have to actually do that step of adding the database that extracts it, right? And we know that that's part of a problem. Analytics built on top of APIs without caching and pulling that data and using that data locally, those analytics just don't work. They break. So as far as AI, it becomes even more pulled out from that. Can't be done without owning the data. Being able to create embeddings, indexing, as we discussed earlier, requires that you have the data and that you actually add additional data to your data that says how that data relates to other data that you have. And that's how AI can actually answer with your data. It doesn't really know what the data is. It just understands this data relates to this data in this way. And so then when it goes to answer, it can have that additional context because it can say, oh, well, based on what you're saying, here's the things that are relevant. It doesn't search everything that you have. It understands the relevance because it indexed. But it can only index if you own
it. To answer Peter's question, it's the point is not to avoid the charge. It's to get access to a more complete set of data on demand.
Yes. And what the last part of it, what it reminded me of there, yes, Aspire has historically charged for APIs. One Landscape, TLR, we've had plenty of time to talk to Aspire. That is a decision going forward. They are not going to be charging for APIs. You no longer have to be on a certain plan or a tier in order to get an API included. It's not an add-on thing. It is now going to be a standard thing across all accounts for Aspire. So if you don't have an API, talk to your account manager at Aspire. If you don't have an account manager at Aspire, talk to Aspire and they will assign an account manager to you, and that person will get you set up with APIs. It used to cost a few $100s. It now no longer does. So some people charge for those APIs. Yeah, and that really just comes down to these vendors are building account systems to create value for you. And they've been more focused on what's happening inside of the system than on how their system integrates into the rest of what you do. And so when they charge you for these APIs, I think that it's worth it. What they're really doing is saying, hey, pay us enough for us to prioritize giving you access to your data. Show us that it's worth it to you. Otherwise, we're going to continue to improve the internals of our system rather than how much that system can talk to something else. That's why these companies charge for it, is to show the demand for integration abilities.
Yes, Peter, we've seen agents navigate changes that may have broken up previous automation. I mean, that was literally one of the things we tested it for before we put it out there. And we tested a few different scenarios. So yeah, they're able to look through a lot of stuff. Now, of course, stuff can come up still that I mean, we have not seen anything so far, honestly. So let's see what comes up.
Yeah. And reading Joseph's question. So like one of his essentially what he's talking about is in his Aspire instance, he's specifically talking about bids, but it could be on anything. He's got data in there that's not really relevant. And how do you ensure that your AI understands that data isn't real, or that maybe it's test data, maybe it's whatever you're going on. So great question. And the thing there is, it really comes down to training. Like, again, if you've used ChatGPT and you've put in a prompt, you can know that the more that you prepare that prompt before you submit it, the better context that you give, the better, just the more work that you put into it, the better the results that you get back out, right? So yeah, sure, we could go and use OpenAI on a centralized database for you, and then just have a GPT custom to you to give you responses. But then there's something called training. Now training is different than having the RAG, what we talked about, indexing your data. Training is where you can really come in and say, oh, hey, sure, you've got this data, but you need to understand those are seasonal workers. They're not here all the time. So of course their crews are dead during, the season that they're not here. That kind of relevance isn't baked into AI. Just because it has your data doesn't mean it understood that, especially if your data was fragmented and it didn't know that they're no longer on the payroll. So that's, again, part of centralizing. The more that it gets centralized, the less you have to train it. But for the spots where you don't have that additional context, you don't know, hey, that person's not getting paid right now, so clearly they're not active, their team isn't working, then you have to be able to train it. So that's where having like those data practices, first centralizing your data, and then having these systems for what are the proper procedures around it that allow you to get back to that. So the established data practices. So yeah, you're going to have your AI that's going to start to give you some answers, and then you're going to see that some of those answers don't make sense because you've got data in there. And then you come back to start to fine tune a model, whether it's any large language model, a private one, what's the name of that? Bob Yard, for example. They're a great AI that's come out for understanding architectural designs. They've done a great job. That said, AI is not really good at understanding architectural designs, not by nature. And if you've tried multiple, between GPT and some of these ones that specialize in video, GPT is not that great at making video compared to VO, right? So each language model has its strength. Just like anybody inside of your organization, there are people that are really good at that one task. There are people that are really not. With GPT-5 that's come out, what they're really doing is giving you multiple models and then real time choosing which model is going to answer your question. Because I don't need to sit there and think for 20 minutes if you just asked, what is today's date? So that's part of that, is being able to make sure that I'm answering your question here, is just having a model that gets trained and tuned specifically for your account. That's the other part of what I'm building out here. Got to centralize your data, building these practices. And one of those practices is being able to have that feedback loop. Hey, we asked it this prompt. It's clearly wrong, and it's probably because of our training data. Can we train the model to give us good results, even with having training data? Or is the better practice to remove the training data and use a sandbox? Like, what do we really have? And that's going to depend upon the platform and a lot of variables there. But that's where data practices come in. Hopefully your vendors give you a sandbox. If you've got that much, bids and things, usually your API can say, like Stripe, there's a test API and then there's production API. So separating out your test data as much as possible is a really good practice, but it's not always realistic for every vendor that you're using. In which case, you get test data in production.
Guys, this has been awesome. I got a bail. I'm getting a couple of calls. Peter, your question here: would you use an AI agent to harvest knowledge documentation in a software to build internal assistant that knows and can advise with the use of the software?
Yes.
I would say yeah. Yeah, for sure. There's a different training loop.
There's one that I use actively called AidBase. And anytime that there's a change in the website, documentation, help center articles, or any of that, it automatically indexes it and it gives me a chat interface, and it's already knowledgeable about all that sort of stuff. So that's a great one, but it depends upon your use case whether that one fits, right? That's not going to be seeing stuff that you have to sign in for, your internal stuff, unless you figure out how to give it access to it. So yeah, there's the more that you make your data accessible, the better AI can do things to serve you. Database. I'll pull it up. Yeah. And again, that may not be the right tool for every situation. And so there are some situations that I use it for, and there are some that I don't. So, and there's a lot of flavors out there. I just like that these guys have APIs and that I can communicate through APIs so yes, again, APIs is a big pro. In my project management software, if it doesn't have a good API, I'm going to go a different direction. So those are great considerations. Coming back to that previous question, having an API is a positive. Any other questions? Utkarsh, sounds like you're ready to jump.
Let's see. There was one that I think Ron asked. Even better would be one that can detect if an opportunity has been reset to bidding. If you have to remember what was happening before you made that change, then it would be able to do that. But I guess you would just have to be careful about the cadence at which you're exporting data to create that baseline so that you can make like more accurate comparisons.
Yeah. It could probably understand that a whole bunch of bids came in all at the same time. Maybe you were testing an API or something, and a whole bunch of bids got created all at the same time, and maybe they look very similar. It could probably understand that and then start to isolate it. But again, that becomes training data for the AI. So there's things like that where, yeah, I like the simple solution. The simple solution is usually the best. Going in and taking on all the manual effort to go and do SEO is not better than just picking up the phone and calling your customers.
Willard, dude, sorry for that mix up with the Central Time and the Eastern Time, man. It's just something or the other happens with time zones.
Yeah. Well, and then I got to sit as a member of the audience for a period of time.
Yeah, I was for a moment, I was like, I will have to bring this on my own.
Yeah, I was like watching you sweat for a minute up there, just thinking, well, if you just click the button on the screen, then I'll be up here. I
know.
Yeah. Thank you
Glad you
guys
made it, man.
for coming. And again, I'm dropping a link here again for anybody that wants to reach out. So
Thank you, guys.
love the
Thank you so
questions.
much. Love the
Thank you
questions,
guys for being
guys.
here.
Keep it coming.
We love hearing
Good
the
luck building.
topics. We love hearing what you guys are focused on and problems, so that way we can build the things that make it easier for you to accomplish those.
Always. Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your day. See ya.